Hi everyone, I'm Obscure Girl. I like movies. I like weird movies. I like weird, obscure, crazy movies that I feel like no one has heard of or is talking about. Whether it is because it's super old, or because the marketing for it sucked, or because it's a movie that you think was a fever dream you had when you were five. I'm here to tell you, it wasn't. Let's talk about it. So today's movie, I definitely think would fall into the I thought that was a fever dream I had when I was five. Because this is the 1994 movie, The Pagemaster,
The Pagemaster.
starring Macaulay Culkin, Patrick Stewart, Whoopi Goldberg, Leonard Nimoy, Frank Welker, Jim Cummings, Ed Begley Jr., of course, plays the dad because when didn't he play a dad back then? And of course, Christopher Lloyd in one of his just classic 90s performances. God, I miss 90s Christopher Lloyd. Like, hot take, it's better than 80s Christopher Lloyd. Okay, nothing's better than 80s Christopher Lloyd. It's close. It's really close. Okay? This movie is a love story to books, especially the classics. I think this is a movie that very much wants to harp in on those ones that Disney didn't already cover because it's not a Disney movie. I believe it's Warner Brothers. And it's a half cartoon, half live action movie. Very young Macaulay Culkin. Like I said, this is 94. So this is very shortly after Home Alone. Um, and he's sensational in it. He plays this kid that is scared of everything and has the stats on everything. Like he knows the safety stats for every little thing. Most household injuries or happen, on stairs or because of ladders and this, that, and the other thing. Total fraidy cat who ends up getting caught in a storm and goes into this library where he meets the librarian Christopher Lloyd in a fantastic over the top performance that's just mwah. And through a series of mishaps ends up getting turned into a cartoon and he has to make it through the adventure, horror, and fantasy sections of the library in order to get to the exit and become human again and be able to go home. And it is such a fantastic movie and I love it. I can't believe it got just pulled under the radar so much for so many people. Like when I try and tell people about it, they're like, it sounds kind of familiar, or they'll just flat out be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I'm here to fix that because I feel like that is a wrong that needs righting. Let's get into it. So now we're going to get into the full spoiler premise. If you want to go check out the movie yourself and then come back after you've seen it because you don't like spoilers, that's totally fine. Then we can talk about it. If you were the kind of person like me that sometimes likes to know, what you're getting into, if you even think it's going to be worth it, and you know that full spoiler reviews, while having the play by play, is not going to show you how they pull it off, and not give you like the little nuances and the things that make a movie a movie. So, it's okay. Like for some people that want to have the spoilers because they realize that's not the movie. The spoilers aren't the full movie. The how, the design, the cinematography, all of that, that's the movie. So, sorry for a little rant there. Full spoilers ahead! Yay! So, like I said, the movie starts off. It is Macaulay Culkin who is playing this little boy named Richard Tyler.
Richard Tyler.
They never give him a shortened name. It's never just Richard. It's not, Rick or Richie or anything. It is Richard Tyler or like Hey Kid or Hey Boy, something like that. That is this kid's name. And he is a total fraidy cat. He has the stats on everything. It opens with his dad, Ed Bedley Jr., telling his mom that, oh, like he was in Little League and he was telling them all the safety stats of, the likability or probability of getting hit. And so none of them wanted to play with him anymore or wanted to play at all anymore. And the dad seems like he's trying to be a good dad, but he just isn't. He's not on the same wavelength as his son right now. His son is very much like scared of the world and scared of life, and his dad's trying to just have him do like normal 90s little kid things like ride your bike and make friends and be in a treehouse because he's building him this treehouse that the kid's terrified to go into because there's heights and a ladder. So it's very much like one of those movies. Um, and I will throw out there that actually my husband had a really good point with this. Uh, we watched the movie together recently, so I could take notes for this. And afterwards, he's like, "You know what the dad in this did right, that the dad in Chicken Little did wrong, because he hates Chicken Little. He hates that movie. I haven't even watched it because of how much he hates it." But basically, he says that, the dad tries. He's just trying to show up for his son. He's trying to support him and guide him, even if he doesn't get him. He's trying to help him not be scared of the world. And it's not this just like, oh, my kid's different, I need to condemn him. And then in the third act, miraculously realize that I love my son. It's He's always loved his son. He's trying to be a good dad. He just isn't sure how to yet. And, we love us a good dad in these movies, like, especially when they could be played so wrong. There are so many dads in cinema that are just awful. This one, actually, he's trying. He's struggling, but he's trying. And we love a dad that tries. So, dad's building him a treehouse and everything, and he's telling his dad the stats of, like, how many people fall off of ladders and household accidents that happen because of ladder falls. And the dad's just like, all right, here's what you can do. Go to the hardware store and get me like a pound of these nails. And so the kid takes off in this bike, this bike. It is the nerdiest bike I've ever seen. Oh my god. You know what? I think even nerds should be offended by me calling this bike nerdy because it is so bad. Just there's like a safety shield up front, and it has beeps to let you know it's coming, and reflectors, and oh my god. Just it he almost tried to build a car around his bike or something. It's hilarious. But he's right in this hardware store, which is pretty far away, I'm guessing, because he never gets to the hardware store. Spoiler alert. But he's going by this group of kids that are all, picking on him, obviously, because even if he wasn't the way he was at school, the bike alone is going to get you picked on, man. And they built this ramp over like some barrels or something. And so they're all like jumping their bikes over this ramp. And he's all just like, not a chance. And then, of course, a storm hits, and he's still not at the hardware store. And so he goes to the nearest building, which happens to be this empty library. And he's like dripping wet, just leaves his bike out front, goes inside, and in walks Christopher Lloyd. God, this performance. The library's totally dark and looks almost abandoned. It's like this lone caretaker of the library is Christopher Lloyd. And he comes up, and at first he looks like, hmm? And then gets to him, he's like, "You've come for a book."
You're here for a special book.
And he's like, "No, no, no, let me guess. I have a knack at knowing what people need." And he's just going this over the top, just like, "You're a boy that loves adventure. No fantasy, no horror."
You're in need of a fantasy. Brave knights, mythical fairies, ferocious dragons.
Look, all I want is
Adventure, of course. You're a boy who loves adventure, brimming with wicked demons, cutthroat pirates.
no, no, that's not it.
Evil demons, wretched monsters, haunted houses, graveyards.
And it's just so over the top, and it's wonderful. It does the heart good. Like, some people in any other performance might have said it was cringy. Coming from Christopher Lloyd, it's just like, oh my god, I'm gobbling this up. This is fantastic. But he gives him a library card, and he says, "This is your ticket, this is your passport." You know, just everything, like, if you're a kid that is already kind of a reader and you get your first library card, it's it can kind of feel like that sometimes, maybe, if you're a super dork like me. But anyway, library card, gonna be important. And then, of course, the kid's just like, yeah, I'm not here for a book. I'm trying to tell you, man. Like, I just need a phone. It's storming out. I'm kind of trapped out here. I was gonna call my folks. And he's all just like, oh, just immediate full facade drop. Yeah, it's back that way. Okay. Go to fiction and take a west. And like the fact that he uses like compass directions in this library at first is like, what? But then he goes into the library and there's an actual giant compass rose on the ground. This library, I wish it were real. I would go there immediately. I go there as a vacation destination. It is gigantic and glorious, and there's this mural on the ceiling, like right above where the compass is, because there's this open spot, and all the book stacks are like surrounding it. But up top, there's just this mural of just dragons and other classic things like pirate ships. And right in the center is a very familiar face looking wizard man, which it's fully Christopher Lloyd's face. They're not even hiding it. Um, and then, so Richard is still dripping all over the place. And, where's the stats on that? Because he trips on his own drippings, basically, and knocks himself out, basically. And then, wakes up, and the library is even darker than it was before. And he can't even hear the librarian at this point. And all of a sudden, all these paint drippings start dripping all around him. It's not just him anymore. Now there's paint, and the ceiling, the mural in the ceiling starts melting and just dissolves all around him into this sea of paint that turns into a dragon that chases him around the library and then finally just engulfs him. And like he's been running through these stacks and everything, and all of a sudden just like it overtakes him and it comes out and the paint drips down and he's a cartoon. He found the phone booth. He's in the phone booth now. Doesn't do him much good if he's not a human, like, 3D character anymore. So at this point, he is in full cartoon mode, and up walks the Pagemaster, which is cartoon Christopher Lloyd from the ceiling mural above. And he comes to him and says, there's no way back. The only way out is forward. And in order to get out, you're going to have to face 3 challenges: horror, adventure, and fantasy. And just follow the exit sign, which is this glowing sign in the distance everywhere he goes, pretty much. And says one of the most magical quotes: when in doubt, look to the books. And God, if that hasn't gotten me through some stuff. But so Pagemaster disappears, all mysterious and wizard like. And then we meet Adventure, which is a book. He's a book with, a face and a peg leg and, bandana and, the eye patch and everything, which he doesn't need. He's constantly like lifting it up to look at things better. God, I love that trope. Um, and he is voiced by Sir Patrick Stewart. Picard himself is Adventure. And I'm telling you, I would not have guessed that this was Patrick Stewart. I wouldn't. I would have said Bob Hoskins, maybe, or maybe even Jim Cummings, who is in the movie. He just shows up later. But like it's Patrick Stewart, and it's absolutely a crazy role for him. I really would not have guessed it was his voice. So we are going through, trying to get through everything, and Adventure's all like, "Oh, I know the way," blah blah blah. And he's like, "Oh, well, where are we?" And they're looking at book titles, which you can, throughout the whole movie, everywhere where there's books, you can see some of the titles of certain classics. And so you see The Hounds of Baskerville. And so Adventure's like, "We're in Baskerville." And they open the book, and out comes at least 1 or 2, like, super angry looking Dobermans. And which, of course, is the cartoon scariest dog of all time. We all remember Oliver and Company. And if we don't, I'll cover it. But so they're getting chased and everything, and then they get out, and then they like realize, this is where you realize basically that when you open a book, things come out of it from that book. So in order to get away from the dogs, they end up opening 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and so like a giant squid ends up chasing them next. Which again, these are not solutions; these are just new problems. But they get away, and then they bump into fantasy. which is another book voiced by Whoopi Goldberg. The Oh my god, the sass queen in this movie, just such beautiful, beautiful sass. I love it. She's like a purple book that has like a little tutu and a wand. She's a fairy, of course, because fantasy. And the lines she has, like when she meets Adventure, he's all just like, "I'm Adventure," and she's like, "That's what they all say." And he's like, "I'm a classic," and she's like, "Okay." And it's freaking hilarious, like exactly what you want from Whoopi Goldberg in the '90s, like to a T, absolutely. So, and they all see that he has a library card and he's their ticket out, and that's this big thing throughout the whole movie is he has the library card, and that is their freedom. Which I realized while watching this movie throughout the whole thing, all these books want to get out of the library. And the more we're getting into this and getting into the world of the library, I'm just like, why? Why would you want to leave this wonderful place? And then I realized that to a book, our world is the unknown adventure. And that kind of, listen, I'm a Beauty and the Beast freak. Yes, I absolutely humanize objects around me and talk to them sometimes. So if I want to believe that my book thinks I'm as much of an adventure as I think my book is, then I'm going to believe it. And you can too now if you're a freak like me. But so that aside, so they're all like, "Oh my god, he's gonna check me out. He's gonna check me out. As long as we can all get to the exit together." And is like, "Well, yeah, the fantasy section. That's my section. Like, is right before the exit. However, my wand doesn't work nearly as well outside of the fantasy section. It's more just like for cheap tricks and stuff outside of fantasy." So they're trudging along. The first place they get to is the horror section, and oh my god, is amazing. First of all, it's a super creepy graveyard, of course. I love me a good graveyard. And then they get to this giant manor at the edge of a cliff with the exit sign looming above it, so they know the only way to get to the exit sign is to go through this house. And this is where they meet Horror, who is this book who is supposed to be like, looks like Frankenstein's monster, looks very patchwork put together. He's got like a dopey grin. Fantasy is immediately like, "Oh, look, he's so cute." And Adventure's just like, "Oh my god, another one. All right, let's just go. He's checking me out, guys. Let's go." And Horror's like, "Don't go in there. There's scary things in there." And you see the address outside is Dr. Jekyll, and then scratched in the stone is Mr. Hyde. And oh my god, I love it because Fantasy's all just like, must be a duplex. And I was just like, okay, spit take, love it. So they end up breaking into the house pretty much, and then door closes behind them. They try and get out, and the doorknob comes off. And around this point is where like Horror is scared of everything, and Richard Tyler is very much like, yeah, I get that. So they're immediately like kind of compatriots. Horror is a super sympathetic character. You just want to protect this poor sweet thing who's clearly seen a lot and has gotten stepped on a lot, and you just want to hold him and protect him. I'm very much that type in any movie, show, book, anything. If I see that sympathetic character that I just feel needs protecting, I will walk into fire for that character. You should see me in my Pathfinder campaign. Anyway, um, if you know that one NPC, you know that one NPC. Anyway, moving on. So they're in the book and then, or they're in the book. They're in the house, and out comes Dr. Jekyll, voiced by Leonard Nimoy. Yes, we have Picard and Spock in the same film. Super, and then Whoopi Goldberg, I know, is also in Star Trek. Yeah, I'm not a Trekkie. I just married one, but I know it's a big deal. Um, so the Trek is very very represented in this show about books. Anyway, um, so Leonard Nimoy perfectly does this voice for Dr. Jekyll, and they're like, "Yeah, we're just trying to get to the other side of the house." And he's like, "The other side, my dear boy, do you have any idea how much danger you're in? Like even right now, in this very room, there are sinister forces waiting to pounce." And it's just like super pleasant as he's telling him, "Oh, you sweet thing, you were in so much trouble." Um, And then he makes himself a cocktail, and guess what? Turns into Mr. Hyde. And this is a genuinely wonderful, scary transformation scene. Probably, I'm not going to lie, like, it's one of the best. I love me a good transformation sequence. And this is genuinely one of the most scary I remember growing up with. Even as an adult, it's chilling. It's really, really well done. And there's not even a lot happening. It's just the use of like color, and then like the Wolfman scene where it's just like hair starts growing and like things like fingers start getting thicker, and just genuinely chilling. And Leonard Nimoy also voices Mr. Hyde, and just the switch of that genteel voice going to the scratchy scary voice.
Dr. J? My name is Mr. Hyde!
It's really chilling and really, really well done. And I absolutely applaud this movie for this scene alone. Like, if you're going to watch this movie for anything, watch it for the Christopher Lloyd at the beginning and then watch it for this transformation sequence because they are just so perfectly done. Like, no notes, no notes. So they are trying to run away from Mr. Hyde, and actually, horror kind of saves them. Like, the chandelier falls on Dr. Jack, or on Mr. Hyde, sorry, and he falls into this hole with the chandelier. Except horror kind of gets trapped in it, and he's getting dragged, and it's like even a Hunchback of Notre Dame callback because he's like, "Master, save me, sanctuary, sanctuary," and Richard Tyler. Yes, I'm gonna call him his full name. Is all just like too chicken to go save him, and so Fantasy's like, "Oh my god, I'll do it." She's like, "At least this wand's still good for something," and turns the wand into a like a welding gun, basically a soldering iron, whatever you want to call it. Sorry, not I'm not into mechanics. But so she ends up like getting him out and saving him, and then they're running up this stairwell with all these books again on the sides, and you can see like Dracula, Frankenstein, um, like a bunch of like Edgar Allan Poe stuff, things like that, and they're running up, and then you see ghost stories, and like literally the books are ghosts, and they start chasing them. They're getting chased by ghost stories, which is kind of cool, and they have to go up the stairs, and they end up at this tower, and they have to jump off the tower to safety. And again, Richard Tyler, total chicken still. He's all just like, "Are you sure about this?" And Adventure has this great line. He's like, "Come on, even books have spines." Oh, oh, that was pretty good. But he ends up jumping off, to his credit. Like, they all end up jumping off. And then they end up on this dock, which is now Adventure, the land of adventure. They are in the open ocean. And they find this rowboat, and they end up going out to open sea. And again, Richard is very, very like, I don't know about this. Like, do you, know the safety stats on this? But they make it out to open ocean, and things start getting choppy. And then you see Captain Ahab coming, and oh my God, here comes Moby Dick. And there's a great line too where horror's all just like, "He's deranged," and Fantasy like, "He's possessed," and Adventure's like, "He's my kind of guy." I crack up every time. But yeah, Moby Dick gets Captain Ahab, and they're like, "Where did he go?" And Horror makes this comment like, he shouldn't be swimming that long after eating. He'll get cramps, which, by the way, has been disproven. But anyway, back then we didn't know that. And then all of a sudden you see Moby Dick come up and like right underneath him, and it's kind of super scary, and also like cute at cartoons for making whales scary, because whales are like the most non-scary creature on the planet, but for some reason cartoons end up making whales terrifying. Good for them. Um, but their ship ends up getting destroyed, and and so Richard Tyler makes it onto this raft, and only Adventure makes it with him. Fantasy and Horror nowhere to be found, and it's assumed that they're gone. And Richard Tyler is all like super super upset, and he goes, "You guys are the only friends I've ever had." And just like, "Oh, okay, it's fine. I didn't need those feelings. Take them." Um, and then they start getting circled by sharks. And all of a sudden, up comes these two clearly pirates in another rowboat. But Richard Tyler's all like, "Oh, we're saved." And Adventure's like, "Careful, matey. Not all sharks are in the water." again, the one-liners in this movie are just top. Love them. But yeah, ends up get in the rowboat with the pirates. And, it's all like, okay, clearly they are now prisoner, even though Richard Tyler's not getting it yet. And up comes this gorgeous, gorgeous ship. And then you see the Jolly Roger sails, and it's like, oh, it's Long John Silver. So it's like, okay, we're in Treasure Island now. Cool, cool. To which my husband made this comment, like, I feel like Captain Hook is scarier. And again, Captain Hook is something that has been super covered by Disney. I think that, this Treasure Island is more of a story that has not been so widely covered, at least at that point at 94. Um, I don't even know if Muppet Treasure Island had come out until like a year later, and then Treasure Planet didn't come out until years later. So this was a less known classic tale that they were trying to bring attention to. So thank you for that, at the time. And then we got to the best adaptations of all time in Muppet Treasure Island and Treasure Planet. But again, I'll get there. So they meet Long John Silver, and now this is where we meet Jim Cummings, because as soon as you hear him, you're like, Pete? But again, Jim Cummings and Frank Welker, who plays Horror, just two of the most prolific voice actors of all time. And I know now we've got Alan Tudyk, who's kind of riding the ranks, but up until that point, it was those two were the majority of cartoon voices from our childhoods and forward. So it was really good having them both here. Like, of course, they're both going to be here, but it was fun seeing where they popped up. And so, already Long John Silver's super paranoid. Like, are you after my treasure? And Adventure's like, you don't have any treasure worth going for. And all the other pirates are superstitious. Super superstitious. I got there. And they're all just like, no treasure. What are you talking about? And even when they get to the island, which, by the way, it looked a lot like Skull Rock from Peter Pan, because it's a giant, like, skull-looking cave on this island, which you never see that when you're on the island. You just see sand and trees. So that was kind of like it's a cartoon. I'll let it go. So they get there, and all the shipmates are kind of freaking out a little bit. They're getting super superstitious. And then you start hearing these ghostly voices, which immediately, like, that's horror and fantasy. But they show up, and Adventure's like, finally, a good fight! And he ends up getting trapped in a treasure chest, and he can't even do it. So then horror and fantasy, and a little bit Richard, but mostly horror and fantasy, are taking out all these pirates one by one. And then it's only Long John Silver who's left, and he's like, come on, boy, let's go. And Richard Tyler's like, I'm not leaving with you. And there's like, oh, go for the sword, go for the sword. Because, of course, there's a sword on the ground in between the two of them. And at first he's very much like, I don't know about that. But then he goes for it. To his credit, he's starting to get that spine. And he goes for the sword and, scares Long John Silver away. And they get Adventure out of the treasure chest. And he is super, super sulking. Like, Richard Tyler is all like, oh, thank God that you guys saved us. Like, right, Adventure? And Adventure's so salty that he did not get to be in this fight, that he owes his, safety to the likes of Horror and a girl in a tutu. Because, non toxic masculinity was rare in the 90s. They got there. They got there. We got Aragorn. We finally got there eventually. So then Adventure takes off, and he's super sulking, and Horror goes after him because he's so proud of himself for not being a chicken for once. And he grabs his bandana and like this little sword, and he's like, I'm just like you. And Adventure is still super butthurt about not being a part of the fight. And he's like, you take that ridiculous thing off. You'll never be like me. You don't know what you're talking about. And like, poor Horror is just so disheartened. He just walks off. And Adventure's still like super just being sulky and everything. And I'm just like, you better go after him. He just wants friends. But at this point, you're kind of starting to see a little bit of a parallel between Adventure and Horror with Richard Tyler and his dad. Because the dad just wants, to be that big brave man that goes on adventures, and he's stuck with this one that's kind of a chicken, and they just don't really understand each other that much, or at least he's not there yet. And so there's just a few like slight parallels between those two relationships that I always think are really interesting in the story. And Fantasy comes up and she has this comment, and I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly why she made the comment. I just wanted to say it. But sometimes you have to fight to make a wish come true. And I always think that that's super cool. It wasn't really until like Tiana that we really had that kind of mentality of, yeah, like you can make a wish, but sometimes you got to work for it and help it along too, which I always think is super important in any kind of media, especially kids media. So then Adventure goes off and he finds horror in Gulliver's Travels mode. He is unconscious, he is pinned down by all these tiny people, and so Adventure goes in and scares them all off. And they all come after him with arrows, and he's just like, thank goodness I was binded with a stiff hide, or something like that, and scares off all the little guys, and he thinks that horror is gone. And so he's like hugging him and he's just like, he was braver than he ever realized. And I'd walk the plank to bring him back. And then horror, of course, is just like, that's beautiful. And so then immediately Adventure's like shrugs him off kind of thing. But, you realize like he does care and he does see him. He's just, tough exterior kind of guy. So then they go off, and Fantasy's wand starts working. And she's like, that can only mean one thing. So they're in the land of fantasy, which, of course, cue the mandatory 90s random R&B song so they can have a montage of fairy tale and Mother Goose like things. Fairies are dancing, and they're actually kind of cool. They're like these little like electric lined like Tesla coil fairies. But you've got like Mother Goose and Humpty Dumpty, and they're walking down the yellow brick road, and you just have this like swelling R&B song. It's very like, if you've seen Fern Gully, and if you haven't, I'll cover it. But the scene where they're in the cave dancing, like you have to have an R&B song with fairies dancing if you're going to be in a 90s cartoon. Mandatory. You understand. So then they walk down the yellow brick road, which of course I got a little for, but they go into this rocky cave and they're kind of messing around. And Adventure cuts off one of the like spiky stones that's inside, and all of a sudden there's an earthquake because obviously it's not just a cave, it's a sleeping dragon. So the dragon wakes up, and now we are in full like action mode again. And there's this whole fight scene with the dragon, and they are so horror saves Adventure from outside of the dragon's mouth right before there's fire breath happening, and Fantasy is like, quick, turn to page 1001, and horror's like, Arabian Nights, and she's like, that's the one, which again, 1001 Arabian Nights. Ah. But he rips out the page, and out comes the magic carpet, and she's like, after the boy, because Richard Tyler is still on top of this dragon that just woke up and is not happy about it. So they all jump on the magic carpet, they go save Richard Tyler, and they end up going up this cliff where the exit sign is shining beacon right at the top. They just have to climb up all these books to get to the exit sign. And Richard Tyler is climbing for his life. This dragon's still going after them, and he doesn't even realize his friends are still stuck inside this cave. They can't get out because the dragon's waiting for them. Sorry, I had to fix the light there. It is storming outside, and the blinds are not cutting it. So, anyway, so he doesn't realize that his friends are still inside this cave, and he's right at the exit. He's like, we made it! And he realizes that they're not there, and he's torn between just leaving them and not facing a whole dragon or going to save his friends. And boy finds his spine because he ends up climbing back down to save his friends. He finds this skeleton that has armor on it, and there's it's like this low key, slightly gruesome scene though because he takes the helmet off of the skeleton, and the skeleton's skull just disintegrates. He also takes like a shield and the sword, and like the guy's arm disintegrates, and they're just like, we're moving past it, even though it's low key a little like, oh my god. But he goes back down, and Adventure is like in the cave with Fantasy and Horror, And he's like, I'm gonna go out there, I'm gonna go save us. And Fantasy's all like, what are you doing? And so Fantasy's all like, oh, don't be a hero. And he ends up like kissing Fantasy, which I realized in that moment. Of course, adventure and fantasy are going to get together because if you read most high fantasy books, particularly ones with dragons, they're also adventures. They're big fantasy themed adventure stories. So, of course, if they get together, we get Brandon Sanderson. That's just how it works. So, and then he has this line where he's like, how'd you like to curl up with a good book? And then Fantasy just kicks his butt out of the cave. She's like, in your dreams. And he goes off, faces the dragon, ends up, getting fired. Which these books, thank God it's a cartoon because they're getting wet, they're getting burned. And me, who, my books are my children. So I'm just seeing all that. I'm like, my babies. Oh my God. But they're fine. They're cartoons, so they're okay. It's not real world consequences. But then Richard Tyler comes down and he's facing this dragon and found his spine, man. He is fighting against this dragon and ends up getting caught up in the dragon's tail, and all the armor and the sword all end up, getting thrown away. And he ends up getting swallowed by the dragon, which of course inside the dragon is still more books. And there's like his stomach acid, which has like flame, like fire swamp kind of spurts. And he's all just like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? He finds Fantasy's wand, which the dragon had swallowed earlier. And he's like, okay, well, that's something. Sticks in his back pocket. And you hear the Pagemaster, look to the books, look to the books. So he starts looking through all the books inside there. And he's like, Alice in Wonderland. And the Red Queen pops out. And he's like, that's not helpful. And then he finds Jack and the Beanstalk. So he opens the book and climbs the beanstalk out of the dragon and ends up grabbing his friends on the way out, and they all make it all the way back up to the exit. So they are saved. They are at the exit. It is time to go. So they make it out of this world, out of the library world, and they go to this. There's just this like giant beam of light in this dark room, and in walks the Pagemaster. Pagemaster himself. All the books are like, that is the Pagemaster, and they're like bowing. They're like, oh dear, you talked to him that way. And Richard Tyler's going off. He's like, I have been almost swallowed, or no, I have been swallowed, like burned, thrown places. Like, I have been almost killed in every possible way. Why did you do this to me? And then there's this really cool scene where this beam of light shows all of the people and things that Richard Tyler has faced. So it's, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, like, hey, you made it out. And Long John Silver, like, you have more heart than you give yourself credit for. And, Captain Ahab was, you faced your demons. And then you even see the dragon, and Pagemaster's like, you did all of this. You survived all of this with your friends. And you need to give yourself more credit. So basically, like, Richard Tyler is yelling at the Pagemaster, like, I've been through all of this. And Pagemaster's all like, but did you die? And he's like, look where you actually are. And you see him, like, the real Richard Tyler in human form, passed out cold on the floor of the library after he tripped. And he's like, it's time for you to go back. Like, you're ready now. You can go back. And so ends up back in his body, and you see horror, fantasy, and adventure, but they're in actual book forms, and they're like these thick leather tome books that don't even really have names on them or anything like that. They're just thick boy books. And librarian Christopher Lloyd comes up, and looks like you've been through some stuff, buddy. But there is this great scene where when Christopher Lloyd comes up, you see like his face going over where Richard Tyler's still looking up at the mural of the Pagemaster, and like his head comes in right on top of that. So that was kind of like a really cool scene. And so Richard Tyler is like, all right, yep, I'd like to check these three out. And he goes, sorry, you're only allowed to check out two. In my head, I'm like, bogus. You can check out up to 11 books in almost any library. but I digress. And so he's just all like, not horror, but I promised him, because he starts taking the horror away. And he's like, please, just this once. And librarian Christopher Lloyd is all like, yeah, just this once. I have a talent for guessing what people need. And so he takes off with his three friends. He gets rid of most of the nonsense on his bike. And you see him going back home, and he actually ends up jumping that ramp in his bike. And he's like, yes, excellent, good, this is very good. So he is now a new, brave Richard Tyler. And you see his parents coming home because they've been out looking for him. And you see his bike in the driveway. And they're just like, oh my God, he's home, cool. And you see the light on in the treehouse, and the dad's like, that's not possible. But you see, he fell asleep in his treehouse reading his three books, and his dad just gives him like a kiss, and he's like, let him sleep out here tonight. And the movie ends with the nightlight getting turned back on because the dad blew it out, and you see the silhouette of cartoon, horror, adventure, and fantasy all talking to each other and just being so happy to be out of the library and that their new adventure is going to begin in this outside world. And that's how they end the movie. And I think it's super sweet and beautiful. And I cannot believe this movie has been forgotten by so many people. I just don't get it. This is such a fantastic film to get kids into reading classics. And the cast is insane. Like, even people I didn't even really bring up that much. Like Captain Ahab, he was George Hearn, which, if you're not a musical theater nerd, he's the original Sweeney Todd. Or the pirates, just the random pirates. You've got Phil Hartman from SNL, Robert Picardo, who I believe is another Star Trek person, and Dorian Harewood, who he's been in a whole bunch of stuff too. These are just like the couple liner characters. This cast is stacked. And just the scenery, and I know, 2D animation is not as popular as it used to be, and I don't get it, and I don't think I ever will. But it's such this great, beautiful, done film, and I love the story of it. There's so many Easter eggs throughout the entire thing for classic books, like that I didn't even mention. There's a scene where they walk into the manor in horror, and this raven statue above the door comes down saying nevermore, and I definitely eked. Just little things like that strewn and sprinkled throughout the entire film. And it's just a story of a boy finding his courage through books. And it's really funny too. Like, I do have one thing to say about it, is like, you're trying to tell me that this kid doesn't read books at the start of this movie. This kid with, no friends, stereotypical 90s nerd, doesn't know about books yet. Okay. But by golly, does he learn by the end. And I think this movie is worth a watch, even to today's generation. Like, there's enough pretty colors to keep little kids amused, and maybe even questioning, like, hey, what about that story? Maybe that's something we can read together. So please give this a rewatch if you haven't seen it, in a long time. Give it a first watch if, you still have a soft spot for 90s kid movies. And if you're a parent, show your kids. Let's give this movie like a cult resurgence. Please. This is such a great movie, and it so deserves it. Anyway, thank you very much for listening to this special and listening to me rant about a movie I love from my childhood. If you are into this kind of thing, please like this video. I'm still really trying to get this channel going. I just learned how to do clips, if you didn't notice. And please subscribe to my channel. I really want to get this going. So, I've been Obscure Girl, and the rest is confetti.